So today, um, not every week, not every Thursday, I go and read from Debka Weekly, but this week I think it's necessary to do so. And as a reminder to all those, what I'm doing, wearing this, I'm wearing the yellow star and the yellow clothing of shame in honor of the Jews who were mistreated, who were pillaged, raped, and murdered by the Christians for nearly 2,000 years. I'm with them. I'm with the Jews. They are my people. And may they receive justice for the unjust cruelty that has been imposed upon them by the Christians for all these years. So, Debka Weekly, I think we're getting to the point of critical mass here, folks. Not sure if I'll read one or two of the articles on here, but this is issue 809, and they ask, why is Netanyahu dithering over fighting Iran and Syria when U.S. is all agog? Jerusalem has received strong messages from Washington, encouraging the IDF to go ahead with an operation for driving Iran out of Syria, along with its Hezbollah and Shiite militia proxies. One such message was handed to the IDF Chief of Staff, Lieutenant General Gadi Eisenkot, in the last week of June, when he talked with General Joseph Dunford, Chairman of the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff in Washington. It came with an offer to deploy U.S. anti-missile missiles in Israel, while also laying on intelligence and quantities of ammo and fuel as needed. The Trump administration, estimates that a Middle East war is around the corner anyway in the coming weeks, in consequence of the U.S. embargo on Iranian oil sales. Meanwhile, U.S. intervention thwarted an Iranian effort to get a hold of $300 million it holds in the European Iranian Trade Bank. The CIA tipped Berlin off that the money was earmarked for use of the Revolutionary Guards Al-Quds Brigade, which runs external terror and subversion. The agency had received intelligence that Iran needed the money to bankroll its preparation for a war with Israel in Syria. Germany's BaFin Markets Regulator and Customs Intelligence Department responded to the U.S. tip-off by informing Tehran that the funds were unavailable pending a close scrutiny. What this means is that the Trump administration is hitting on Iran's international banking ties and funding for its external operations even before the U.S. oil embargo is clamped down in November. On Tuesday, July 10, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo charged Russia with reneging on Trump-Putin accords for Syria. In an interview with Sky News in Arabic, Pompeo said, "We had an agreement with the Russians that they would not move in the south. There was a de-escalation zone that the Russians had agreed to. They have now violated that." This was a message for Israel that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu should save himself a journey to Moscow scheduled for the following day because Vladimir Putin is not to be trusted. Even if he did guarantee the ouster of the Iranians and their pawns from Syria, the Russian leader would break his word. Therefore, it was time for Netanyahu to stop treading water for deals with the Russians and start sending the IDF to do the job of evicting Iran in Syria. This would enable Trump, when he sits down with Putin in Helsinki next Monday, to demonstrate that the U.S. is not holding Israel back from engaging Iran. So why is Netanyahu hanging back? He may be worried by a former episode that ended badly. In 2006, President George W. Bush and Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice urged the Israeli Prime Minister at the time, Ehud Olmert, to conduct a blitz operation for smashing Hezbollah's war buildup in Lebanon, trusting it would be over and done in days. However, the IDF turned out to be unprepared. The operation dragged on for 34 days. Hezbollah was not smashed or defeated, and northern Israel came under heavy rocket attack until Rice managed to scrape together an unsatisfactory ceasefire. While no one in Israel has forgotten that unfortunate experience, Debka Weekly's sources have a different explanation for Netanyahu's hesitancy. Despite his hawkish image, his entire record as prime minister attests to extreme caution when it comes to full-scale war. He is less venturesome in this respect than any of his predecessors, having taken to heart the precept that it is easier to start a war than calculating when or how it will end. His vacillation also stems from the absence of reliable U.S. or Israeli intelligence prediction on how Iran will respond to an Israeli offensive. It is still an enigma, so Netanyahu and Israel's top military chiefs are carefully taking extreme scenarios into account. They accept that going to war against Iran and Hezbollah would potentially inflame three hostile fronts on its border: Syria, Lebanon, and the Gaza Strip, and may spill over into broader regions. In the worst case, Iran could launch ballistic missiles from its home bases against Israel's population and strategic centers. While hoping they avert a missile duel between Israel and Iran, Israeli strategists understand that they may not be in full control. Matters may have been taken out of their hands when Wednesday a Syrian military drone entered Israeli airspace only to be shot down by IDF Patriot missiles and followed by Israeli airstrikes against three Syrian outposts near Quneitra. This round of hostilities may be the trigger for an Israeli-Syrian showdown over the Golan, in which pro-Iranian and Hezbollah forces will certainly take part with unforeseeable consequences. You see how close we're getting to the point of no return here, folks. And it is reasonable to conclude that this holding back may be seen by Syria, Iran, and Russia as weakness on the part of Israel. I'm not saying one way or the other if it is. I'm just saying that they may miscalculate and consider it weakness. Now, there is one thing that I want to mention before I continue. Afghani soldiers and Pakistani soldiers are also alongside these Hezbollah. In fact, I will read another article from Debka Weekly, and you will see just how many. And then I will try to explain how that might fit in with Ezekiel 38. The title is Israeli-Iran War in Syria Hangs in the Balance Between Two Summits. Israel might be prevailed on to accept Syrian military forces on its Golan border, provided Bashar Assad agrees to respect the 1974 ceasefire lines and accept a UN observer force for monitoring the DMZ. According to Debka Weekly sources, that is the concession Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu offered Russian President Vladimir Putin when they talked in Moscow on Wednesday, July 11th. This concession was to be part of a package deal that Putin is to tie up with President Donald Trump in Helsinki on July 16th. But above all, it would be contingent on Iran agreeing to fit in with Putin's deals with Israel and U.S. and leave Syria. Clearly, it's a pipe dream. The roughly 235 square mile demilitarized zone on which the Netanyahu-Putin talks hinged runs north from the southern tip of the Golan up to Mount Hermon. Its width varies according to the terrain, from the narrow strip of a few dozen meters in the south to 6 kilometers at the northern end of the Golan and widening out to 10 kilometers on the Hermon. If Putin and the Syrians were to buy the Israeli proposal, Israel would pay the price of accepting Syrian tanks and artillery posted opposite IDF defense lines, not only on the Golan, but also the Sea of Galilee, Lake Kinneret, which is Israel's primary source of water. For this concession, Israel would exact Russian and Syrian guarantees for the removal of all pro-Iranian forces, including Hezbollah and the Iraqi, Afghani, and Pakistani Shiite militias under the Revolutionary Guard's command from every inch of Syria. However, no assent on this roadmap emerged from the Putin-Netanyahu face-to-face in Moscow on Wednesday, July 11th, although they will no doubt talk again. Their meeting was accompanied by the sounds of the first direct Israeli-Syrian duel over Quneitra in the Golan. An Israeli Patriot downed an intruding Syrian drone, and its air force retaliated by bombing 3 Syrian army posts in the Quneitra district. Putin is to be offered further inducement for ridding Syria of the Iranians at his summit with President Donald Trump on July 16th. The plan is to offer a U.S. pullback from eastern Syria and the border with Iraq, which would start at the end of the full evacuation of Iranian, Hezbollah, and Shiite forces from the country. On the table first would be the U.S. exit from the strategic Al-Tanf outpost commanding this intersection of Syria, Iraqi, and Jordanian borders. Our sources report that the aides preparing Trump's summit with Putin advised him to limit his offer to Al-Tanf, but they realized that the president may expand this offer in the heat of bargaining. Officials in both Washington and Jerusalem hope Putin sees the attraction of the U.S.-Israeli proposals in that they enable Assad to take over Syria's frontier lands with Israel, Jordan, and Iraq without firing a shot, amid Russian-brokered ceasefire deals with the rebels. But Iran is an outsized fly in the ointment. With a stranglehold on the Syrian-Russian partnership, its rulers are fixed in their determination to stay in Syria come what may. They might possibly be moved by Trump offering through Putin some relief from their ever-toughening sanctions. He will clamp down on the Iranian economy and oil sales in the coming months. That scenario is just as unreal. Trump can't afford to show weakness on Iran, with Secretary of State Mike Pompeo's nuclear and missile disarmament negotiations with North Korea at such a delicate juncture. Debka Weekly's intelligence sources report that Netanyahu presented Putin with a list of units Hezbollah and the Shiite militias are fielding for the Syrian army, Dara'ah, Quneitra operations close to the borders of Jordan and Israel. Our sources reveal its contents here for the first time. Hezbollah al-Radwan Division of Special Forces. 2 brigades of Iraq's powerful Hashid al-Shabi military alliance. Liwa Fatimyon, a.k.a. Fatimyon Division, and Afghan Shiite militia, the Sanabayon Brigade, a Pakistani Shiite militia. Together, they comprise 1,800 combatants under the orders of Iran's Southeastern Command from its base at Isra. Therefore, around half of the fighting strength in the southeast Syria consists of Shiite troops under Iranian command, in flagrant violation of Putin's commitment to the U.S. and Israel to keep those troops out of Syria's southern campaigns. Under no circumstances will Bashar Assad forego this vital component of his military strength. Another of Putin's promises was broken when Russian Air Force conducted dozens of airstrikes in support of this combined southern Syrian offensive. Netanyahu's information was not news to the Russian president, who receives daily briefings on the various southern Syrian war fronts. According to our sources, Putin's plan was to procrastinate on Netanyahu's complaints and keep him waiting for answers until he sees the U.S. president next Monday. He will then press Trump hard to get him to hold Israel back from going to war against the Syrian Hezbollah and pro-Iranian forces approaching its borders. Putin has 5 days to turn the situation around. Halting the Assad army advance in the south would help, but that will be a tall order given the counter-pressure from Iran for the Syrian ruler to keep going, especially after the initial trading of blows between Israel and Syria on Wednesday. Now, did you notice, folks, they have a division from Afghanistan and a division from Pakistan and also a division from Iraq? Okay. Let's go to Ezekiel 38 for a minute. Oh, come on. All right. So let's do a rundown. We see in verse 5, Persia, Ethiopia, and Libya with them. All right? So obviously, Persia, Ethiopia are not from the north like Meshech, Tubal, Gomer, House of Togarmah, etc. This is a different group. All right? These coming, well, Persia coming from the east. We assume Ethiopia comes from the west, from the south, and Libya. Okay. Now let's keep in mind, folks, that this was written, 2,500 or more years ago. All right? So, certain people have moved around just a bit. Not everyone, but certain ones have. The Persians have not. So when you go and look at Ethiopia, Ethiopia is actually a name, a Greek name. So let's look at the Hebrew name for Cush. For Ethiopia, it's Cush. It's 3568 in the Strong's Concordance. And for Libya, it's Put, 6316. Now, In Libya and Ethiopia, there have been a lot of slave trade going on and migration to different areas of the world. And it is possible that whole groups of Kush left Africa for the East. There is, how do I put this? There is a name called Hindu Kush. What I'll do is I will go to Wikipedia and I will do some reading about Hindu Kush. It's also known in ancient Greek as the Caucasus Indicus. In Pashto and Persian, as Hindu Kush, is an 800-kilometer long, 500-mile mountain range that stretches near the Afghan-Pakistan border. Do I need to go any further? I don't think so. You see, folks, it is possible. He was talking about people from Pakistan and Afghanistan joining up with Persia, called Hindu Kush. Interesting, huh? So, in all truth and in all honesty, there really is not a whole lot more left to account for when it comes to the different armies that are joining this invasion from the north. Is there? When you read, or if you don't get Debka Weekly, but if you hear me read these articles from Debka Weekly, and these are former Mossad folks who run this publication, you know it sounds like war is imminent. So, even more than ever, we really are going to have to very seriously pay attention to this Putin-Trump summit. We have just read that Putin has broken all his promises, all his agreements with the United States and with Israel, just like Hitler broke all his promises and all his agreements with the British. And you know what happened then. You know what's in the Golan Heights. You know what it is they're after. This war is coming. They're not stopping until they see the face of Jehovah, our Father in heaven. So this situation might get out of control very quickly, And I don't even know if we're even going to make it to July 16th. We shall see. So, once again, pay attention. This thing might come quicker than we thought.